I want to begin by telling you today about something rather remarkable that happened just last week. Right in the middle of Holy Week, Holy Tuesday, something rather astonishing happened right here in downtown Cleveland. And it happened to one of our own dear Old Stone church members. And it's something that really very, very few people in this world ever get to experience. I know I have never experienced it. And when I heard about his experience of it, I got a little bit envious. I thought, boy, I wish I had been there to experience this. Now, I need to tell you, I don't want to mention Dennis Hansen's name because he would feel really bad if I pointed him out. Like I said, I wasn't there, but there were witnesses who shared with me, and there were witnesses who posted this experience on Facebook. And I'm pretty sure they didn't Photoshop any of it, because I know these people, and they're not capable of Photoshopping anything. But let me tell you, smack dab in the middle of Holy Week, Holy Tuesday, right there at the Quicken Loans Arena, Gund Arenas to some of you old-timers, right there at the queue, in front of thousands of fans on Tuesday night, Dennis got to ride the Zamboni. Some people write great compositions, some people ride the Zamboni. Let me ask you, why is it we love to watch the Zamboni when we're at the arena? Why is it across America, across North America, really around the world, people can't get enough of Frank Zamboni's tractor on ice going around the rink, cleaning things up between periods in a hockey game? Even Charles M. Schulz's star character, Charlie Brown, in the Peanuts comic strip, once said that people love to watch three things in this world: a flowing stream, a crackling fire, and the Zamboni cleaning the ice. What is it about Zamboni that we love so much? I'm glad you asked, because I have a theory. My theory is that we love to watch the Zamboni going around the rink between periods in a hockey game for the same reason we come to church on Easter Sunday. I think we see something in the Zamboni that reminds us of what God did on that very first Easter Sunday. See, the Zamboni brings new life. The Zamboni restores the order of things. Zamboni restores the ice no matter how chunked up it gets by hockey players or ice skaters' skates. No matter how much blood gets spilled on the ice during any given period. No matter how many teeth get knocked out and scrambled across the center line. We know that in 20 minutes, Zamboni will come out and restore it all. Bring it back to new life. Some people will even skip out of running to the snack bar to get snacks because they don't want to miss the Zamboni. My wife and I used to be season ticket holders for the Lake Erie Monsters, and I remember hearing some people in our section saying, "Oh, don't go to the snack bar now. You don't want to miss the Zamboni. Wait till the game's back on, then go to the snack bar." There's something mysterious when we see the ice being restored to new life. I think it reminds us of what God is doing in our lives. It's sort of like the way we like to watch the car wash sometimes. You ever notice you run your car through the car wash and you stand behind that glass? How many people have their noses pressed up against the glass watching their cars go through? Sure, I know on the one hand we want to make sure they're not going to snap a mirror off, or in the old days didn't want to break the antenna off. But there's something wonderful about seeing the car cleaned. I remember I was at Carnegie Car Wash down here at 36th and Carnegie one day, and I'm watching my car go through the car wash, and there's a woman beside me. She's watching her car go through the car wash, and I said, it's just like baptism, isn't it? She had a similar response. She looked at me with this look of amazement, astonishment, as if she had no idea what I was talking about. I said, you know in baptism how the water washes away all the dirt, the crud that this world heaps upon us, and we get washed clean in Jesus Christ. And she said, uh-huh. But Zamboni is even bigger than car wash. Because Zamboni doesn't just clean the ice, Zamboni restores the ice. And I think there's something about that moment, like many moments of Easter or resurrection in this world, that draw our attention. We look at it with hope, with longing, and even belief, and gladness and joy at seeing something that's been beaten up, something that's been torn up, restored to new life. You know, I think Easter is the Zamboni of our lives. When you think about it, isn't that what God did on that very first Easter? God took what was broken, what was beaten down, what was executed at Golgotha, what was stuffed into a hole and a big old rock rolled in front of it, and God rolled the stone away. God raised it to new life. God raised it up to new life, just as God raises up us to new life in this world and the next. Easter is the Zamboni of our lives. You can quote me on that. That's okay. Just look at the Apostle Paul. I don't normally preach on Paul on Easter Sunday, but something about his first letter captivated me this past week in preparation for this moment now. Paul was writing in his first letter to the Corinthians about the appearance of the risen Christ. First he appeared to this one, then to that one. Then he appeared to 500 people gathered, then here, then there. And then Paul says, and last and least of all, the risen Christ appeared to me, one who was untimely born. And I thought, why haven't I seen that before? What does Paul mean, one who was untimely born? Does Paul mean that I was born a little too late? I never got to know Jesus personally before he was crucified? Does Paul mean I was born too early? There's something else coming? And so I scratched the surface of this letter, this ancient letter that Paul had written to the faithful in Corinth. And I looked at this word, untimely born. This phrase, untimely born, I realized is the English language's way of softening the blow of Paul's language. You know, the word Paul uses in Greek isn't untimely, or the phrase isn't untimely born. The word in Greek is ektroma, ektroma. And brace yourselves, the word literally translated means aborted. As one whose life was stopped before it started. Now don't go home and say, hey, Pastor Mark was preaching on abortion today. That's not what I'm talking about. Paul's trying to find a word that identifies how he was feeling spiritually in this world, ektroma. I think the best translations of this word ring most true when they translate it something like, as one still born. One born without life, without hope. You remember when God said to Jeremiah in the Hebrew Scriptures, I knew you when you were in your mother's womb. And we go, beautiful. God was with you from the beginning. Paul never had that feeling, that belief. He had ektroma. He felt like he was stillborn. And before he was Paul, he was Saul. You remember Saul before he was Paul? Because he felt lifeless, because he felt he was born without God, without hope, without the resurrection, Paul, who was Saul, allowed the powers and principalities in his life to have their way with him, the way many in our world who feel dead spiritually allow the sinfulness or the powers and principalities of this world to have their way with them. And do you remember what Saul did in his lifelessness when those powers and principalities got a hold of him? Saul started working for the empire. Saul started turning over Christians to be arrested and executed. It was his job, his self-chosen profession, to round up the followers of Jesus, those who'd witnessed the resurrection, those who'd experienced Jesus firsthand. He wanted to bring them all in, have them arrested and executed. The book of Acts talks about Saul being there when Saint Stephen was stoned to death. Do you know what Saul did? He held the coats, the cloaks of those who were stoning Stephen to death so that they could get a fuller swing in pitching those rocks at Stephen for his faith. You think that might have turned him off a bit, seeing something so repulsive as these people stoning Stephen to death for his simple belief in Jesus Christ. But no, you know what Saul did? Remember, he has no Spirit of God in him. He believes he's stillborn, born without God. The Christians go into diaspora. Most of them went running to different territories, regions. And Saul goes and volunteers and says, hey, let me go get them. I'll do that. I'll work for the empire. I'll go get these people of faith so you can arrest them and potentially execute them. I was thinking if Saul lived in our day and age, he'd probably have his own reality show. Saul, the bounty hunter. Well, Saul's on his way to Damascus. Going to round up some of those people of the way, they call them, Christers in Greek. People who believed they were Jewish, but they believed in the resurrection of Jesus. And Paul's on his way to Damascus to get some of them, round them up. And as he walks along the road, Acts chapter 9 says he saw this flash of light from heaven, and he falls to his knees. Now, just a little heads up, if you see a flash of light from heaven, fall to your knees. It's a good thing to do. If you see a flash of lightning, you might want to fall to your knees too, or get into some safe place. Saul did exactly what he should have done in the presence of God. I imagine what any of us would do in the presence of God. Flash of light, boom. He went down to the ground. Saul says, he hears a voice. And this voice says, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And Saul says to the voice, who are you, Lord? And the voice says, I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting. Notice the voice didn't say, I am the Spirit of the risen Christ. It didn't say, I am God. It didn't say, I'm the presence or a feeling. The voice said, I am Jesus. In other words, the risen Jesus appeared to Saul right there on that road to Damascus. And Saul was blinded by this light. And the scripture says that he and some of his followers became speechless after this moment. I say that because I know there may be some people here today who are here for the speech and debate conference at the Renaissance Center this week. And I think it's fascinating that there's some moments when some of us Christian theologians become speechless. It's in the presence of God. Mum's the word. He became speechless, and Jesus says, get up and go to Damascus, and I'll give you the directions from there. Saul had a conversion right there on the road to Damascus. It's beautiful to me that this one who was dead is on the ground. He went down, and in the presence of the risen Jesus, he is raised up. Isn't that what we're experiencing? Isn't that what we experience when we feel dead to this world like Saul did, who was raised up and became Paul and became one of the greatest Christian theologians ever? In fact, the first Christian theologian to go into the world and tell, just as Jesus had told those people at the tomb on Easter morning, go and tell, go and proclaim. Saul became Paul. He had been converted. He had been raised up. The one who felt like he was untimely born, stillborn, has now been born again. He's filled with the new life in Jesus Christ because he's experienced something of the resurrection. He's experienced Jesus, the resurrection. Now, I know many of you here in this room know exactly how Paul felt. Some of you here in this room have had moments in your life where you have felt spiritually dead. Maybe it was in your marriage. Your marriage felt dead, without hope. Maybe it was in your relationship with your adult children or your adult parents. Maybe you felt like there was no hope. Things have been broken for too long. It's just not going to work itself out. I know some of you have felt spiritually dead because you've been controlled by the powers and principalities of addiction. Some of you have lived your life in prison, literally, for years. And then you met the risen Jesus, and you were lifted up. You were raised up. The risen Christ said, "Get up," and you got up. You didn't understand it. Maybe it blinded you. Maybe it made you speechless, but you got up. You experienced something you had never experienced before. Your life was being restored. You know, last month through the season of Lent, I made a new friend, a man by the name of Glenn. Glenn started coming to our Hope for the City series, which was our midweek Wednesday program, every week. And we got talking, and Glenn told me his story. See, Glenn was connected to the life. He was connected to organized crime. His life was spiritually dead. He was feeling lost. And then Christ found him, restored his life, and sent him, just like he sent Paul, to now proclaim the truth of the resurrection. Now, Glenn has a new ministry. It's called Godfellas Ministry. Godfellas Ministry has one target audience: people who've been caught up in the life or in organized crime. He works with these people who have been murderers. They've dealt drugs at large quantity, have been responsible for a lot of violent crime throughout the world. And with the courage of Christ, with the hope of the resurrection, he goes to these people, whether they're in prison or in the world, and says, "Listen, if Christ could raise me, if Jesus could raise Paul and Jesus can raise me, then Jesus can raise you." And he leads people to the new life in Jesus Christ. I think we all know what that's about to some small degree or another. No, I hope we're not all tangled up in organized crime. But we've been there. Those times we feel like we're untimely born. We feel like the Spirit of God has been absent in us. And then the risen Christ appears to us and raises us up. The risen Christ appears to us, and we find the strength to say no to the worldly powers and principalities in our lives. We begin anew. Just as sure as God raised Jesus on Easter, just as sure as God will raise us when our life here on this world comes to an end, God also raises us in the here and now as a sign of the resurrection that is still to come. This past Friday, my beloved Beth and I, after Good Friday service here at Old Stone, took a quick trip over to Windsor, Ontario, where Beth's best friend, Jenny, lives. They've known each other since high school, Jenny and her husband, Tony, and Beth and I. We've known each other a long, long time. Well, not too long ago, Jenny, at the age of 50, was diagnosed with a kind of cancer that the doctors say only 10% of people will actually beat this thing. And at first she was feeling down, as you can imagine, like anyone here in this room has felt when the doctor gives them that report. She felt like Saul on the ground, as one without hope, without life. But then slowly, over the last month or two, Easter has been breaking in on her. The promise of resurrection has surprised her the way it surprises all of us, the way it surprised Jesus' disciples at the tomb, the way it surprised lifeless Paul on the road to Damascus, and she is being raised up. We had brunch with her and Tony yesterday morning. They made us brunch in their home, and of course we felt like, oh, we don't want to be a burden to you. You've had 3 weeks of chemo. You must be feeling terrible. Something's happened. She's a new being. She had so much joy in greeting us. Chemo had no power. Maybe to cure the cancer, but it had no power over her spiritual well-being. Let me tell you, she was glowing. She said to us about a week or two ago how awful she felt to be in the shower washing her hair, and all of a sudden big clumps of hair coming out in her hands. Those of you who've had chemo, you know what she's talking about. But Easter surprised her. And she asked her husband, Tony, hey, can you help me with this wrap for my head? And if you know my friend, Tony Gattosi, he's wrapping a wrap on, I mean, it's like braiding, you know, it's a complicated thing for some of us, but it was the most loving thing. They did it together. And then they opened their table to us in a way, kind of the way Jesus opens the table to all of us, a table of grace and mercy. And what joy Jenny had in savoring each and every moment. Easter was surprising her. No longer was she one who was on a path of dying. She was now one who was living. Such is the power of the risen Christ, to take those who were once lost and find them, those who were once broken and heal them, those who are feeling dead to this world and raise them with hope. Allow them to live their lives in the bright light of an open tomb. Friends, I've got some advice for you today. If you ever get the chance to go to a hockey game, and you should make the chance to go to a hockey game, whether it's at the Q or maybe one of our fine local arenas here in Cuyahoga County, I hope you take the chance to go. And when a period of hockey comes to an end, don't be so quick to race off to the snack bar. Hang tight. And I want you to watch that Zamboni making its way around the rink in these special patterns, restoring that ice to new life. And as you see that Zamboni restoring the life, I want you to think about God and how God is restoring our lives through the resurrection of Jesus Christ all the time. And I want you to look and see if there's anyone standing to your right or your left. Because if there is, I want you to do this. I want you to breathe a big sigh and say, you know what? It's just like Easter. Because the final message of Easter is to go and tell. And when that person says, what the heck are you talking about? It's just the Zamboni, for crying out loud. You tell them your pastor down at the Old Stone Church says Easter is the Zamboni of life. Easter, God's promise of resurrection, is restoring us all the time. Praise be to God. Amen.